I refused the family vacation after my sister demanded free babysitting, and it changed everything. I'm a 34-year-old guy, single, no kids, and for most of my life I've played the role everyone quietly assigned me. The dependable one. The uncle who shows up early. The brother who doesn't complain. The son who keeps the peace. Until I didn't. Every summer, my family does a vacation together. Same general setup every year. We rent a big beach house somewhere along the East Coast, split the cost, and pretend for a week that we're all closer than we really are. This year was supposed to be no different. My parents sent the group text back in January way earlier than usual. Thinking about Outer Banks this year. Big house. Everyone in? My sister Laura responded within minutes. Yes, the kids would love it. I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to go, but because I knew what that yes actually meant. Laura has 3 kids. 8, 6, and 4. High energy, loud, messy, and completely innocent in all of this. I love them. I really do. But loving them and being expected to function as unpaid childcare are 2 very different things. In past vacations, things followed an unspoken script. Laura and her husband would sleep in. My parents would need a break. And somehow, without anyone ever directly asking, I'd end up watching the kids at the pool, on the beach, or back at the house while everyone else relaxed. I told myself it was temporary, that it was just a week, that I didn't want to make things awkward. That was my first mistake. This time, I decided I'd do it differently. I wasn't going to assume anything, but I also wasn't going to silently accept responsibility that wasn't mine. So when Laura called me a few days later, I already had a feeling where the conversation was heading. She didn't waste time. So, she said, cheerful and casual, I was thinking we could plan out babysitting shifts ahead of time this year, just to keep things organized. I paused. Babysitting shifts? I repeated. Yeah, she said, like this was the most obvious thing in the world. You're so good with the kids. And honestly, it'd help us actually enjoy the vacation. There it was. Not help sometimes. Not if you're free. Shifts. I asked who else would be on these shifts. Well, she said slowly, Mom and Dad said they're getting older, and Mark and I really need the downtime, so I figured you'd take the mornings and maybe a couple afternoons. I did the math in my head. Mornings and afternoons. Every day. So when exactly is my downtime? I asked. There was a brief silence on the line. Well, you don't have kids, she said. So it's different. That sentence hit harder than I expected. I stayed calm. I told her I wasn't comfortable committing to that I was going on vacation too, not signing up for a job. Her tone shifted immediately. Wow, she said. I didn't realize you'd be so selfish about this. Selfish. Because I didn't want to be responsible for 3 kids that weren't mine, during a trip I was also paying for. I told her I needed to think about it and ended the call. That night, my parents called. Not together. Separately. First my mom. She's just overwhelmed, she said. You know how hard it is with kids. Then my dad. Family helps family, he said. We all make sacrifices. No one asked what I wanted. A few days later, Laura sent another message. This time it wasn't framed as a suggestion. Just so you know, we're counting on you to watch the kids most days. We already planned activities around that. I stared at my phone for a long time before replying. I'm not going on the trip. The reaction was immediate. Calls, texts, voicemails. Laura accused me of ruining the vacation. My mom said I was breaking her heart. My dad said I was creating unnecessary drama. But here's the first twist I didn't see coming. When I told them I wasn't going, they didn't just get upset. They panicked. Within hours, my mom called back, her voice tight and forced. Well, she said, if you're not going, we'll need to revisit how we split costs in the future. That's when it clicked. They weren't just upset about losing an extra pair of hands. They were upset about losing their safety net. Because what no one had admitted out loud was this. I wasn't just the babysitter. I was also the backup wallet. On past trips, I'd covered groceries when things ran over budget, paid for gas, covered last-minute expenses, never asked to be paid back. It wasn't generosity, it was expectation. And when I refused the vacation, I wasn't just stepping out of a trip. I was stepping out of a role they all depended on without acknowledging. That realization hurt more than any accusation they threw at me. I told them calmly that my decision was final, that I needed space. Laura didn't speak to me for weeks. Then one night I got a text from her husband, Mark. "Can we talk? Just us." That message changed everything. Because Mark wasn't angry. He was apologetic. And he was about to tell me something that made me realize this vacation wasn't the real issue at all. When Mark asked if we could talk, my first instinct was suspicion. Laura and I might disagree, but Mark had always stayed neutral. Quiet, polite, the kind of guy who nods along at family dinners and disappears into the background. I figured this was going to be a guilt call. A polite version of, "Hey man, could you reconsider for the sake of the kids?" Still, curiosity won. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our places. Neutral ground. No audience. Mark looked exhausted. Not tired in the normal parent of three way. This was something heavier. Dark circles. Slumped shoulders. Like he hadn't slept properly in weeks. He didn't order coffee. Just sat down and rubbed his hands together. "I owe you an apology," he said. That caught me off guard. "For what?" I asked. "For how this was handled," he said. "And for letting Laura put you in that position again." Again. That word lingered. I told him I appreciated it, but I didn't expect him to take responsibility for Laura's decisions. He sighed. "That's kind of the problem," he said. "I should have a long time ago." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "The babysitting thing wasn't just her idea." I raised an eyebrow. "It was Mom and Dad's," he said. I laughed, but not because it was funny. "That doesn't surprise me," I said. "No," he replied. "You don't understand. They came to us before we even booked the house." He explained that after last year's vacation, my parents pulled Laura and Mark aside and told them something that made my stomach drop. They were done watching the kids. Not occasionally. Not just needing a break. Done. They said they wanted this year's trip to be about relaxing, Mark said. No responsibilities. No chasing kids. No schedules. "So they volunteered me," I said flatly. Mark nodded. "They told Laura you'd be happy to help, and that it was basically expected." I felt a familiar mix of anger and disappointment tighten in my chest. "But here's the part that really messed me up," Mark continued. He hesitated, then said, "They also told us you were the reason they could afford the trip." I blinked. "What?" "They said if you didn't come, the whole thing might fall apart financially." That one stung. I knew I'd helped out before. I just didn't realize it had been factored in. "They told Laura," he went on, "that you didn't have many obligations, so it made sense for you to contribute more, money-wise and time-wise." I sat back in my chair. So that was it. I wasn't invited as a brother or a son. I was invited as a resource. Mark watched my face carefully. "When you said you weren't going," he said, "they freaked out. Not because they'd miss you, but because they didn't know how to make it work without you." I took a long breath. "And Laura?" I asked. "She feels caught," he admitted. "She doesn't want to upset them. And honestly, she's burned out." There it was. The crack in the narrative. This wasn't just entitlement. It was pressure trickling down from the top. But here came the first unexpected twist of part 2. Mark looked me straight in the eye and said, "She didn't tell you everything." I waited. "She promised the kids you'd be there," he said quietly. "She told them Uncle Jake would be with them all week. Beach days, ice cream, games." That hit harder than anything else. Because now I wasn't just the bad brother. I was the uncle who bailed. "I didn't know," I said. "I know," Mark replied. "That's why I wanted to talk to you first." I sat there, staring at the table. For a moment, I almost reconsidered. Almost. But then he added something else. "And she promised them you'd watch them during their anniversary dinner." I looked up sharply. "What anniversary dinner?" Mark grimaced. "They booked a fancy restaurant 2 hours away. No kids allowed. Overnight babysitting." "Overnight?" On my vacation, I felt something in me snap. Not violently, but cleanly, like a cord finally being cut. So it wasn't shifts, I said. It was full responsibility. Mark nodded. I didn't agree with it, he said, but I didn't stop it either. And that's on me. I appreciated his honesty, but it didn't soften the reality. I told him I wasn't changing my mind. He didn't argue. Instead, he said something that surprised me again. I think it's good you said no, he said. Someone needed to. Then came the second unexpected twist of part 2. He leaned back and said, because if you hadn't, Laura and I were probably heading for a blow-up anyway. He admitted that this vacation wasn't just a getaway. It was a pressure cooker. Laura was exhausted. He was stretched thin. They hadn't had real help in years, but instead of asking, they'd leaned harder on assumptions. And my parents, he added quietly, enable it. We sat there for a while, not talking. Before we left, Mark said one last thing. They're going to try to make this about you being selfish, he said. But it's not. It's about boundaries. I drove home thinking the worst was over. I was wrong, because 2 days later, my mom showed up at my door unannounced. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She sat down, folded her hands, and said something that reframed my entire childhood. You've always been the easy one, she said. Not the loved one. Not the appreciated one. The easy one. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just about a vacation. It was about a lifetime of quiet expectations I'd never agreed to, but had been living up to anyway. When my mom said, "You've always been the easy one," she didn't mean it as an insult. That was the part that unsettled me the most. She said it like it was a compliment, like it explained everything. You never caused problems, she continued, smoothing out the napkin on my coffee table. You didn't push back. You didn't need much. You just adapted. I sat across from her, quiet. She mistook my silence for agreement. That's why this is so hard, she said. This isn't like you. There it was again. Not this hurt us. Not we crossed a line. Just, this doesn't match the version of you we're comfortable with. I asked her directly why they assumed I'd handle childcare, expenses, and responsibility without being asked. She hesitated. Then she sighed. Because you always have, she said. That conversation didn't end in yelling. It ended in exhaustion. She left thinking she'd explained herself. I stayed behind realizing something darker. I hadn't been respected because I was reliable. I was relied on because I never demanded respect. The fallout didn't stop there. Over the next week, the family group chat turned cold. Not hostile, just passive. Photos of beach houses, links to activities, discussions that conveniently excluded me. Then came the phone call from my dad. He didn't open with emotion. He opened with logistics. If you're not coming, he said, we need to talk about expectations going forward. That phrase again. Expectations. He explained that as parents, they'd always counted on me to balance things out. Laura had kids, stress, obligations. I didn't. You've got more flexibility, he said. It's just practical. I asked him when practicality became entitlement. He didn't have an answer. That night, Mark called again. His voice was tense. Things blew up, he said. Laura had finally snapped. Not at me, at them. According to Mark, she confronted my parents after realizing how much had been assumed and promised, without her fully processing it. She said they put her in an impossible position, he told me, that they used you to avoid helping themselves. I felt a strange mix of validation and sadness. But then came the unexpected twist, the one that shifted everything. Mark lowered his voice. There's something else, he said, and I don't think they planned on telling you. My stomach tightened. What? I asked. They were counting on you after the vacation, he said. I didn't understand. For what? I asked. Mark exhaled slowly. They're planning to downsize, he said. Sell the house. I froze. They were going to use part of the money to help Laura, he continued, and they assumed you'd step up, help bridge the gap. I felt like the room tilted. They didn't tell you, he he said. Because they assumed you'd say yes once it was already in motion. There it was. The real reason they panicked when I said no. The vacation wasn't a one-off. It was a test run. They weren't losing a babysitter. They were losing the foundation of a plan built without my consent. I didn't sleep that night. I replayed years of moments I'd brushed off. Times I'd paid without question. Times I'd rearranged my life to keep things smooth. It wasn't malicious, but it was systematic. The next morning, I sent a message to the family group chat. Not angry, not emotional, just clear. I love you all, but I need to step out of any plans that assume my time, money, or responsibility without my agreement. That includes this vacation and anything beyond it. The reaction was immediate. Laura accused me of abandoning the family. My mom said I was being dramatic. My dad said I was misinterpreting things. But something unexpected happened. Mark backed me up. Publicly. He wrote, "This wasn't fair to him, and we all know it." Silence followed. Hours later, Laura called me. Not to argue, to cry. She admitted she was overwhelmed, that she felt trapped between her parents' expectations and her own exhaustion, that promising the kids I'd be there was wrong. But she'd been desperate. "I didn't mean to make you the bad guy," she said. I believed her, but belief didn't erase the damage. I told her I loved the kids, that I'd still be their uncle, just not the solution to everyone else's problems. She didn't like it, but she understood. The vacation happened without me. From what I heard, it wasn't relaxing. My parents ended up watching the kids more than they expected. Laura and Mark argued. The cracks that had been hidden by my presence showed fast. When they came back, things were quieter, different. No one asked me to help out. No one made assumptions. And for the first time, I felt like I wasn't part of a role, but a family that had to finally face itself. I don't know what part 4 looks like yet, but I know this. Refusing that vacation didn't break my family. It exposed what had already been fragile. And sometimes saying no isn't selfish. It's the first honest thing you've ever done. I thought things would go back to normal after the vacation. Not the same normal, but a quieter version. Fewer expectations, less pressure, maybe even some unspoken understanding. I was wrong. What came next wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was subtle. And in some ways, that made it harder. A week after my family got back, my dad asked if we could grab lunch. Just the two of us. That alone was unusual. Growing up, one-on-one time with him was rare unless something needed fixing. We met at a small diner we used to go to when I was a kid. Same cracked vinyl booths. Same burnt coffee smell. He didn't bring up the vacation right away. He talked about the drive, the traffic, the weather. Then he said, "Your mom and I are really tired. Not physically, emotionally." He admitted that the vacation hadn't gone well. That watching the kids full-time was harder than they remembered. That Laura and Mark fought more than they expected. "I guess we forgot how much you used to carry," he said. Not helped with. Carried. That was the closest thing to an apology I was going to get. Then came the real conversation. They were still planning to downsize. That part was true. But the assumptions, the quiet expectations that I'd fill the gap, those were gone now. "We shouldn't have made plans that depended on you without asking," he said. That wasn't fair. I nodded. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt lighter. A few days later, Laura invited me over. Just me. No kids. No parents. She looked worn down, but honest. "I've been mad at you," she said. "But I realized something while you weren't there. I waited. I didn't miss you because you help," she said. "I missed you because you're their uncle, and because you make things calmer." That mattered. She told me she'd started saying no more, to my parents, to extra commitments, even to herself. That she and Mark were looking into actual childcare help. Paid help, not assumptions. "I shouldn't have put that on you," she said. "Especially not without asking." That was an apology. The kids came running in then, tackling me with hugs like nothing had ever changed. And that's when I knew I'd made the right choice. Because boundaries hadn't taken me away from them. They just put me back where I belonged. A few months later, the family dynamic was different. Not perfect, but clearer. I wasn't the automatic solution anymore. When someone needed help, they asked. When I said yes, it meant something. When I said no, it was respected. The biggest change came quietly. At Thanksgiving, my mom pulled me aside and said, "I didn't realize how much we leaned on you until you stopped." She didn't say sorry, but she didn't need to. Here's the thing I learned from all of this. People don't always mean to take advantage of you. Sometimes they just get comfortable with your silence. Refusing that vacation wasn't about babysitting. It was about choosing not to disappear into expectations that weren't mine. And for the first time in my life, saying no didn't cost me my family. Finally let me be part of it.